War Eagle, and welcome to another edition of Ever to Podcast, the show where we get together with you to catch you up on the latest Auburn news, topics, information, things that you need to be aware of when you're going around discussing and sharing in the Auburn experience. All about Auburn sports, Auburn culture, Auburn family. The easy way to say it, though, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. So thank you so much for joining us in what we're doing on today's episode 94. Today's date is April 3rd, 2026. And as always, I'm your host, Kyle Loomis, bringing you this edition of Ever to Podcast. Our agenda is as typical, although with some interesting situations this week due to some schedule changes with the big Easter holiday this Sunday. Things have been shifted forward a little bit, so it's going to be a little light on the news, maybe a little bit. And then, some things have moved up in terms of schedule, things like that. So it's just a very interesting week gathering all this stuff up for you. So we're going to go through individual sports here with some of the news of the week, and at the end give you the calendar of events that are left for the early and stretched out weekend, trying to accommodate for the Easter weekend, and rightfully so. So let's jump into it right there. We'll start with baseball as we typically do during this time of year. Obviously not a good note to start on. Auburn was in the middle. I said it's a key term right now, sitting here on this Friday. And we also are doing this episode a little bit later Friday, so things may have changed in a couple of hours in between that. Anyway, I digress. Auburn baseball did get run ruled by Georgia Tech here in Atlanta 3-13. I did try to attend that game, actually, and was it packed out and sold out, and just didn't make it over there in time to get tickets and things like that. But 3-13, it looked good at the start, and then it got worse when Georgia Tech just piled on in their home facility. And it's just tough when you're in a rough stretch like that. But brighter days were ahead for Auburn baseball coming up in just a little bit. Right now, we're starting to get a lot of updates on watch lists, things like that, because it pretty much is the mid-season in everybody's minds. So, for instance, Buster Posey Award watch list, the catcher award, Chase Fralick is still up with that. He's on the mid-season watch list for that particular one. There's the Golden Spikes mid-season watch list, and you've got Jake Marciano, one of Auburn's really good starting pitchers, who finds himself on that mid-season watch list for them. And then one more as well, Baseball America Pitcher of the Year, also giving the nod to Jake Marciano. And on top of that, Andres Alvarez. And foreshadowing something here in just a second, you can see why he's getting the nod for Andres Alvarez alongside Jake Marciano for Pitcher of the Year, at least on their watch list that they're putting out right now. As a reminder, Plainsman Plaza Part 2, as they're calling it, is going to return this Saturday. They did a test run of it a couple Saturdays ago, where it's going to be this big entertainment event that you have to have a ticket to the game to get into. That's going to feature a tiger walk, food trucks, entertainment things for kids and family on the outside leading up to the game. All that's happening. The game's at 2. The plaza opens at 11. You can watch other sporting events on some of their TVs in there as well. So that is returning. Go check that out, and I think you're going to have a good time there. That would pretty good reviews from the first go-around on that one, especially for a big series. This is kind of a in the pros update, but it's more about Auburn baseball. They've officially updated their Big Green Monster wall sign for the major league players the Auburn players that have made their way up to the big leagues, because that is now 64, as we've talked about, with Ryan Watson making his way up there and finally adding to Auburn's number 64 on the big green wall. You can see it for yourself as Auburn's legacy continues. And then that brings us to a very early start to the weekend because of the Easter holiday. The Auburn Tigers are victorious over the number 15 Arkansas Razorbacks by the score of 10-2. An absolutely awesome flurry of offense. Arkansas really didn't even get going with their scoring until very late. So good on them for having a big bounce back, not just after the midweek, but after what's been a really rough stretch for them, and more games this weekend. Basketball, lots of good basketball news this go around this week, and we've got some even more things to look forward to here as well. But first, a big addition, commitment, and not just a commitment, a signing for Auburn men's basketball in Stephen Pearl, a big man, a 7-footer, and he's coming out of France. The Pointers basketball, I think is how you say that, or it's a little small font there. But this is going to always be a name that everybody has to get used to saying. Narcisse Ngoy is how I believe you say that. I've worked on saying it, and hopefully I'll get better at it. But Narcisse Ngoy is the brand new 7-foot center coming over from France, and has a lot of people excited. And Coach Pearl put out a statement about him as well. A big start to a potential offseason of rebuilding the roster in the very first true image of Coach Stephen Pearl. So a nice addition there. Speaking of which, the other great news, your Auburn Tigers are victorious in the semifinals, Final Four, of the NIT by the score of 88-66. They take down the Illinois State Redbirds, not Cardinals, Redbirds. Absolutely outstanding game from them, the best they've had of the tournament, and frankly, the best that they've had in quite some time. It was a really good feeling right now. We talked about it on the post-game stream, and I just went on and on and on and on about it. And I'll go check that out because there was just a lot to like individually, but also as a team. I think they did a lot of good things and have you feeling really good as a fan going into the final game. Here in just a second, we'll give you the information on that. One quick note from this game: during the Illinois State game, Tahad Pettiford officially passed 1,000 career points. So he does it as an Auburn Tiger. Congrats to him. That's one of those big individual accomplishments that happened in that game, which brings us to the final game of Auburn's 2025-26 men's basketball calendar. This is it. There's no more questions. This is you win and you go, or you win or lose and you go home. So hopefully win. Auburn, the 1 seed, Tulsa, the 1 seed from the other side, or one of the 1 seeds, will play each other this Sunday, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 Eastern, April 5th, for the NIT Championship in the same place as the March Madness Final Four and March Madness tournament the day before the actual national title game at Cambridge Fieldhouse. So really exciting there for this basketball program and what they've overcome and what they've accomplished. A lot of things are starting to conclude, and unfortunately for Auburn Gymnastics, their season now comes to a close with their regional performance there. It looked like for a minute in Baton Rouge Regional that they were going to make a little sneaky competition here to squeeze out of that the first two, as the way I understand it, the first two go out of the group of 4 that are competing in that regional to the next step. And unfortunately, they were not able to do that. They took on, obviously, the host site, LSU, Clemson, Nebraska. There's a lot of Tigers there in that particular one. Ultimately, they end up coming in third, not too far behind Clemson. And if they had been able to overtake them, this might be a little bit different of a story. So, unfortunately, the season didn't really pan out the way that Auburn Gymnastics wanted. Their season comes to a conclusion. But now you regroup and get ready for the next year of competition. Auburn women's golf, this is more of an individual note, a pretty cool thing. We've seen this, some big individual performances even recently for women's golf, going to particular amateurs and winning the whole thing. Well, right now, Anna Davis has been competing in the Augusta National Amateur, and she has made it to the final day of competition, which is today. So that's a big accomplishment in of itself. I think when I looked back on the leaderboard, she was like 18 back or something like that. I could have that wrong. But even just being there and making it to the final day of making the cut, the final day of competition, is a big accomplishment of itself. So congrats to Anna Davis. Auburn Equestrian, boy, the postseason just doesn't love them sometimes. But despite getting upset in their host site of the SEC Championships, they still will hold the number 1 seed title for the NCEA Championships down in Ocala, Florida. And I still think rightfully so off of what they've accomplished this season, which brings us to your bracket in general. Just a quick overview of that. Keep in mind there are 2 different brackets. There's the single discipline and dual discipline, which is where Auburn is. Where a lot of the big programs are. Auburn will take on Fresno State. If they were to beat them, they would take on the winner of South Carolina SMU. You know, SMU's been a problem in the postseason in the past, although Auburn got them in the regular season this year. On the other side of the bracket, Georgia's taking on Oklahoma State. Texas A&M and is taking on TCU. So if everything goes chalk here, Texas A&M and Auburn could meet each other in the finals for the championship, and a little bit of revenge for Auburn getting knocked out by Texas A&M, who won the SEC championship. So there's your bracket. Be looking for that. Their season is almost done as well. Tennis updates for you all. Some rankings across both programs for the men's side of things. In the ITA, they currently sit at 18. For the women's side of the ITA, they are down to 4, which is interesting. They did lose a game we'll talk about in a second, but that was before that. I'm still trying to understand all these rankings, but still an honor to be in the top 5 of the ITA, and they're still number 1 in the UTR, which is a separate, different kind of ranking as we're learning about this season. Quick individual shout out on men's tennis side, player of the week, SEC player of the week, that I should say. Hamza Nasridov is your SEC player of the week for his performance over the past week, so congrats to him. Men's tennis did lose to Texas A&M 3-4. So very close, and they were a top 10 team. So, and you can understand that's a tough competition there. The women, unfortunately, dropped one of their few matches as well to Texas A&M. Now, the difference here is that was also a very highly ranked team. They were number 2. Auburn was number 4 coming in with the rankings at this point. And if I'm not mistaken, the few matches they've lost have been to like top 5, top 10 teams. Georgia at one point and the ITA indoors, and then now Texas A&M at their place, and they're number 2 overall, 2 spots ahead of them. So just some updates there on the performance of that. Football spring practice, that continues on. Lots of press conferences and interviews that are being put out by a lot of people. We put out the athletic department ones on our channel. Check those out. They went to their first scrimmage in Jordan-Hare Stadium and under the lights. That is a very cool, I don't know how often they've done that in the past in spring. I know they typically do it, but apparently they went really late. And there was a lot of celebrities out there as well. Cam Newton met Byron Brown. Takeo Spikes was out there. Seems like he's been around town a lot lately, interviewing Golish and everything. But that was an exciting update there. And, just some big storylines of this week. There was this obsession about a period that they had during their practice called the Iron Bowl period, where they were playing Dixieland Delight. And Bama fans, got an uproar about that, and other weird people as well. They're having a period where they're preparing for their away game, where they're going to hear Dixieland Delight and a lot of crowd noise and all that stuff. It makes sense, I think, if you don't be an emotional, stupid fan about it. So, obviously, I've made my feelings known about the consternation about that. Auburn soccer continues its SEC schedule. Its spring schedule on Columbus State. They were hosting them. I think that was their first home one. 3-0 they win, and they have one more coming up. So that spring competition season is almost wrapped up as well. Some schedule news for Auburn volleyball. They will take part in the SEC Big Ten Challenge Week. So this is similar to like basketball, where there's cross competition between the major conferences, and they feature it a lot that week. But this is the difference here. They face 2 opponents. They'll take on Minnesota and Wisconsin in that SEC Big 12 Challenge Week. I really like that it kind of mirrors the basketball thing. I think that's really cool. One will be on Wednesday, September the 2nd, the other Thursday, September the 3rd. All of that will take place at the host, Madison, Wisconsin. So there's a schedule update for him. And as a final note for you in the pros, kind of starting with going back to how we started talking about Ryan Watson. I don't know how he's done the rest of the way in his debut in the MLB, but for his first performance, 2.1 scoreless innings for him when he came in and played for the first time as the brand new Auburn big leaguer out there. So congrats to him, and congrats to all the 64 major league players that were former Auburn Tigers as well. That brings us to your calendar to wrap up. Again, this is an abbreviated calendar because everything shifted forward and started on last night. Thursday was just, wow, it was busy. A lot going on. Men's golf will be at the Mason Rudolph for 3 days and compete all throughout the weekend there, leading up to Sunday. Track and field will be at the Florida Relays, which will take place up until Saturday. And, of course, the baseball series versus Arkansas will continue on Friday the 27th. The 28th, this Saturday, we've already talked about a few of those things that can continue there. You got volleyball at Georgia Tech, so a good opportunity for Atlanta folks to see your Auburn Tigers. Men's and women's tennis will take on Texas. They just got done doing Texas A&M. Men's tennis at home, women's tennis on the road. Softball will begin their series at Arkansas, which will stretch into Monday. Baseball will wrap up their series with Arkansas at home. And finally, on Sunday, there is some action on Easter. Men's golf will continue on. Softball will continue with that Arkansas into Monday. And men's basketball in the NIT championship that evening. Really big, exciting day. But the most important thing is Easter. And I hope you all have a great Easter holiday. Enjoy it with family and know the reason for why we celebrate. And just obviously hope that you keep all of that in mind with our Savior Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for tuning in here today on this episode of Ever to Podcast and hanging out with me on a very unique episode. As always, we want to hear from you. Keep up with us on social media. You can direct message us there if you need to. Email us e2cnetwork@gmail.com. And as always, as we go and remind you the Auburn Creed, ask you to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. We ask you to do the same. War Eagle.